You're praying every day. You've fasted. You've cried out to God when nobody was watching. You've tried to stay faithful, stay obedient, stay patient. And yet, your financial situation hasn't changed. Bills still pile up. Opportunities still pass you by. Meanwhile, you look around and see people who don't pray, don't fast, don't even acknowledge God, and somehow they're winning. They're getting promotions, buying property, upgrading their lifestyle. And that creates a tension inside you that nobody talks about. You start asking quiet questions you don't say out loud. God, what am I missing? Am I doing something wrong? Why does it feel like I'm being overlooked? And the longer it goes on, the heavier it feels. Because it's not just about money anymore. It's about confusion. It's about doubt. It's about trying to reconcile your faith with your reality. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Frustration like this doesn't come from lack of effort. It comes from misalignment. You're doing something, but it might not be the right thing. You've been taught that spiritual activity alone produces results, but real life keeps proving otherwise. That gap between what you believe should happen and what's actually happening, that's the frustration gap. And most people respond to it in two ways. Either they give up on the process, or they double down emotionally without changing anything practically. But neither works. Because the issue isn't that God is silent. The issue is that you may be expecting results from actions that were never designed to produce them. Faith is powerful, but faith without direction turns into exhaustion. Prayer is essential, but prayer without execution leads to stagnation. You don't have a faith problem. You don't even have a prayer problem. You have a strategy problem. And until that gap is closed, until what you believe lines up with what you do, you'll stay stuck in that same cycle, hoping, waiting, and wondering why nothing is changing. You've been conditioned to look for big moves, big money, big opportunities, big breakthroughs. But real wealth doesn't come from big moments. It comes from small actions, repeated over time. And that's exactly why most people never build it, because small actions feel insignificant. Saving a little feels pointless. Investing a small amount feels slow. Improving step by step feels like it's not enough. So people quit early. But here's what they don't understand. Consistency compounds. One small action by itself doesn't look powerful. But repeated daily, weekly, monthly, it starts stacking. And once it stacks, it starts growing. Quietly at first, then faster than you expect. The problem is, most people never stay long enough to see that shift. They start, they stop, they restart. They lose momentum. And every time they reset, they go back to zero. Not because the method doesn't work, but because they didn't stick with it. And that's the difference. It's not about doing something extreme. It's about doing something consistently, saving regularly, even if it's small. Improving your skill, even if progress feels slow. Working on something daily, even when there's no reward yet. That's how momentum builds. And once momentum builds, things begin to accelerate. Opportunities start appearing. Income starts growing. Confidence increases, not from motivation, but from proof, because now you've seen it work. So stop looking for something dramatic. Look for something repeatable. Because what you do once doesn't change your life. But what you do consistently, without breaking the chain, that's what creates real results. Most people think saving money is enough. It's not. Saving protects you, but it doesn't grow you. If all you do is hold on to money, you're playing defense forever. And defense alone never builds wealth. It only keeps you from falling backward. At some point, you have to shift from protection to multiplication. And this is where fear shows up. People are afraid to move their money, afraid to invest, afraid to try something new. So they hold everything tightly, thinking they're being safe. But in reality, they're slowly losing ground, because money that doesn't move doesn't grow. It just sits there, losing value over time. And the deeper issue is mindset. You've been taught to avoid risk completely. But the truth is, there are two types of risk: reckless risk and calculated risk. Reckless risk is gambling, chasing quick wins, jumping into things you don't understand. That's how people lose money fast. But calculated risk is different. It's learning first, starting small, testing, adjusting, growing gradually. That's how money multiplies. So the goal is not to be careless, but also not to be frozen, because doing nothing is a decision too, and it's usually the one that keeps you stuck. Think about it. If you never put your money to work, it will never work for you. And no, you don't need a huge amount to start. Even small amounts, invested consistently, begin to build something over time. It won't look impressive at first. That's normal. But again, growth is quiet before it becomes visible. So the shift is simple. Stop thinking like someone trying to hold money. Start thinking like someone learning how to grow it. Because the moment your money starts working with you, instead of just sitting with you, that's when real progress begins. Relying on one source of income is one of the biggest risks people ignore. It feels safe because it's stable. You get paid regularly, you know what to expect, and it creates a sense of security. But that security is fragile, because it depends on something you don't fully control. A job can end, a business can slow down, an industry can shift. And if all your income comes from one place, when that one place shakes, everything shakes. That's not stability, that's dependence. And dependence limits growth. Because when you rely on one stream, you're forced to protect it at all costs. You avoid risks. You avoid new opportunities. You stay comfortable, even when you know you should be expanding. But people who grow financially think differently. They don't just earn, they build. They create additional streams. Not all at once, not recklessly, but gradually. One extra source at a time. Something small at first, something manageable, something that grows alongside their main income. And over time, those streams start stacking. Now, you're not dependent on one paycheck. You have options. Flexibility, breathing room, and most importantly, leverage. Because if one stream slows down, the others support you. And this doesn't require something complicated. It could be a skill you already learned, offered as a service, a small side business, freelance work, teaching what you know, selling something useful, helping others solve a problem. The point is not perfection. The point is expansion. But here's where most people get stuck. They wait for the perfect idea. And while they're waiting, nothing changes. Because you don't need the perfect stream. You need a starting point. Something that brings in even a small amount. Because once it starts, you can improve it, scale it, replace it if needed. But if you never start, you stay dependent. So stop asking, what's the best option? Start asking, what's one extra stream I can build right now, even if it's small? Because small streams, multiplied over time, turn into a river. Making money is not the hardest part. Keeping it is. You can learn a skill. You can increase your income. You can create opportunities. But if you don't have control over your decisions, none of it will last. Because money doesn't disappear randomly. It leaks. It leaks through impulse decisions, through emotional spending, through the need to look successful before you actually are. And the worst part, these don't feel like big mistakes in the moment. It's small things. An unnecessary upgrade, a quick purchase to feel better, a reward you didn't earn, subscriptions you don't use, habits you don't question. Individually, they look harmless, but together they create a pattern. And that pattern slowly cancels out your progress. So you earn more, but nothing changes. That's why self-control matters more than income. Because without it, every increase turns into higher spending instead of higher stability. You level up your lifestyle, not your financial position. And that's a trap. Because now you're working harder, earning more, but still feeling stuck, just at a higher level. Self-control breaks that cycle. It forces you to pause before you act, to question whether something is necessary or just emotional, to choose long-term gain over short-term comfort. And yes, it's uncomfortable, because saying no feels like missing out. It feels restrictive. It feels like you're holding back while others are enjoying life. But what you're actually doing is building control. And control gives you options. Because every time you don't spend unnecessarily, you're not losing, you're redirecting. You're choosing future growth over present distraction. So the real question isn't, how much do you earn? It's, how much of it do you control? Because that answer determines whether you stay stuck or actually move forward. You don't make decisions in isolation, whether you realize it or not. The people around you influence how you think, what you normalize, and what you believe is possible. And over time, that influence becomes your standard. If everyone around you complains about money, avoids responsibility, and settles for just enough, you will slowly absorb that mindset. Not because you're weak, but because repetition shapes belief. And belief drives action. So even if you're trying to grow, your environment can quietly keep you small. You'll second guess bigger moves. You'll feel uncomfortable improving. You'll hold back to stay relatable. And that's how people stay stuck. Not because they lack ability, but because they're surrounded by limitations. Now understand this clearly. This is not about judging people or cutting everyone off. It's about awareness. You need exposure to better thinking. People who are disciplined. People who manage money well. People who build instead of complain. People who have already gone where you're trying to go. Because when you're around that, your standards rise. You start seeing what's possible. You start thinking differently. You start acting differently. And that shift changes everything. But here's the hard part. You might not have that circle right now. That's fine. Then you build it intentionally. Through books, through content, through mentors, through communities focused on growth. Because proximity is not just physical. It's mental. What you listen to daily shapes how you think. And how you think shapes what you do. So if you've been stuck, don't just look at your actions. Look at your environment. Because sometimes the fastest way to level up is to change who and what you're learning from. You've been thinking the problem is delay, that God hasn't answered you yet. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? What if the issue isn't that God is silent, but that you missed the answer because it didn't come the way you expected. Most people expect answers to come as miracles, sudden breakthroughs, or supernatural moments. Something dramatic, something undeniable. But that expectation can blind you to something far more powerful and far more practical. Because often, God doesn't respond with instant results. He responds with instructions. And instructions don't feel exciting. They don't feel spiritual enough. They don't give you that emotional high. They require thinking, discipline, and consistency. So people overlook them. They keep praying for outcomes while ignoring the process that leads to those outcomes. That's the mistake. You've been asking God for financial breakthrough, but expecting Him to drop money into your life instead of giving you a system to create it. You've been waiting for provision while ignoring preparation, waiting for increase while avoiding responsibility. But look at the pattern. Throughout Scripture, God rarely hands people finished results. He gives them direction and then expects them to move. Noah was given instructions to build. Joseph was given strategy to manage resources. The widow was told to gather jars before the oil multiplied. In every case, the answer came first, but it didn't look like the answer. And that's exactly what might be happening to you. You've been waiting for something new, while sitting on something you haven't applied yet. The answer isn't missing, it's unexecuted. That's a hard truth, but it's also a powerful one, because it means you're not stuck. You're not forgotten. You're just one decision away from moving. And once you stop asking, why hasn't God answered me? And start asking, what has He already told me that I haven't done yet? Everything shifts. Here's what most people never realize. The Bible you read for comfort was also written for construction. You've been treating it like a devotional. Something to calm your mind, lift your spirit, get you through hard days. And that's part of its purpose. But that's not all it is. Hidden inside those same pages is a system, a blueprint, practical instructions for how life actually works, including money. But because nobody framed it that way for you, you missed it. You read Proverbs for inspiration, not for strategy. You read parables for meaning, not for method. You highlighted verses that felt good, but skipped over the ones that required discipline. So the very answers you've been praying for were sitting in front of you the whole time, disguised as wisdom. And wisdom doesn't shout. It doesn't force itself on you. It waits to be applied. That's why two people can read the same scripture and get completely different results. One treats it like encouragement. The other treats it like instruction. One feels better. The other moves forward. The difference is not in what they read. It's in how they use it. You were never meant to just agree with Scripture. You were meant to execute it, because the Bible doesn't just tell you what is right. It shows you how things grow, how things multiply, how things are sustained. It talks about planning, discipline, stewardship, multiplication, risk, timing. These are not abstract ideas. These are systems, and systems produce results. So the issue isn't that the path to financial growth is hidden. It's that you've been reading it in the wrong category. You saw it as spiritual guidance, but not as practical instruction. Once that shifts, once you stop asking, what does this mean? And start asking, how do I apply this? You stop being a listener and start becoming a builder. And builders don't stay stuck. Most people don't have a money problem. They have a definition problem. You've been taught two extremes, and both are wrong. One side says money is everything. Chase it, grind for it, measure your worth by it. The other side says money is dangerous. Avoid it, downplay it, act like wanting it is somehow wrong. So you end up confused, wanting financial stability, but feeling guilty for pursuing it. Praying for increase, but subconsciously resisting it. That internal conflict alone is enough to keep you stuck, because you cannot build what you secretly believe is bad. The truth is, money itself is neutral. It's a tool. It amplifies who you already are. That's why Scripture doesn't tell you to chase money, and it also doesn't tell you to ignore it. It tells you to understand it. And that's the part most people skip. You've been focused on outcomes, more income, fewer bills, a better lifestyle. But outcomes are the result of systems. And if you don't understand the system, you'll keep chasing results that never stay. Think about it. How many people make more money and still stay broke? How many get a raise and immediately increase their spending? That's not an income issue. That's a lack of understanding. Wealth isn't built by moments. It's built by patterns. Daily decisions, small habits, consistent behavior over time. That's what creates stability. That's what creates growth. And that's what most people ignore because it doesn't feel exciting. You've been waiting for a breakthrough moment. But wealth doesn't usually come that way. It comes quietly, gradually, through understanding how to manage, multiply, and protect what you have. So the goal isn't to obsess over money, and it's not to avoid it either. The goal is to become the kind of person who knows how to handle it. Because once you understand it, you stop chasing it, and you start controlling it. Let's be honest. Most people don't want a system. They want a shortcut. They want something quick, something exciting, something that feels like a breakthrough. That's why instant success content spreads so fast. It feeds the illusion that one moment can change everything. But real growth doesn't work like that. The truth is, discipline is boring. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't give you immediate results. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. They'd rather chase something new than stay consistent with something that actually works. And this is where the problem gets deeper. People replace discipline with spiritual language. I'm waiting on the right time. I'm praying for confirmation. I'll move when I feel ready. It sounds wise. It sounds patient. But most of the time, it's just hesitation dressed up as faith. Because real discipline doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It moves anyway. It shows up when you don't feel like it. It repeats the same actions when there's no visible reward. It sticks to the plan long after the excitement is gone. And that's the part nobody celebrates. But it's the part that produces results. You don't build anything meaningful through hype. Hype fades, motivation fades, even inspiration fades. But discipline stays. It's what turns a skill into income. It's what turns saving into stability. It's what turns small actions into long-term growth. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you've been stuck for a long time, it's not because you lack potential. It's because your actions haven't been consistent enough, long enough, not intense, not emotional, consistent. Because success doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do repeatedly. So the question isn't, do you feel ready? The real question is, are you willing to do the same right thing over and over, even when nothing is happening yet? Because that's where everything starts to change. You keep thinking you need money to start. You don't. You need something far more valuable, something most people ignore because it takes effort to build. You need a skill. Money follows value, and value comes from what you can do, not what you wish you had. That's why two people can start in the same place, with the same resources and end up in completely different positions. One develops capability. The other waits for opportunity. And opportunity always moves toward capability. Look at it clearly. If someone handed you a large amount of money right now, but you didn't have the skill to manage or multiply it, it would disappear. Not because you're unlucky, but because you're unprepared. That's why skill comes first. A skill is something the market will pay for. Writing, editing, designing, coding, selling, cooking, repairing, teaching. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it solves a real problem for someone. And here's the part you can't ignore. You already have access to learn. You don't need permission. You don't need expensive courses. You don't need perfect conditions. Information is everywhere. Tutorials, free platforms, communities, mentors. The barrier isn't access. It's focus. People dabble in 10 things and master none, then wonder why nothing changes. Skill requires depth. You pick one thing, you stay with it, you improve it daily, even when it feels slow, even when nobody notices, because eventually that skill becomes valuable enough that someone is willing to pay for it. And once that happens, everything shifts, because now you're not just hoping for income. You can generate it. So stop asking, where will the money come from? Start asking, what can I become good enough at that people will pay me for? Because the moment you answer that and actually commit to it, you stop being stuck and start becoming dangerous. You say you believe, you say you trust the process. But belief without movement is just talk. At some point, what you do has to match what you say. Because real faith is not passive. It's active. It doesn't sit back and wait for something to happen. It moves based on what it believes is possible. And if there's no movement, then there's no evidence. That's the part people don't like. It's easy to feel spiritual. It's easy to speak positively. It's easy to say, I trust God. But when it's time to take action, learn the skill, start the work, make the call, offer the service, that's where hesitation shows up. And hesitation kills progress. You keep telling yourself you're waiting for the right time, the right opportunity, the right clarity. But the truth is, clarity often comes after you move, not before. Think about it. Nothing changes until something starts. The people who move forward aren't the ones who feel ready. They're the ones who decide to act anyway. They start small, they make mistakes, they adjust. And through that process, things begin to open up. But if you stay still, nothing opens. You don't need more belief. You need more action tied to that belief. Because effort is not the opposite of faith. It's the evidence of it. Every step you take says, I believe this can work. Every attempt says, I'm willing to try. Every repetition builds momentum, and momentum is what changes your situation. So if nothing is moving in your life right now, don't just ask what you're believing. Ask what you're doing. Because the moment your actions align with your intentions, everything stops feeling stuck and starts feeling possible. You cannot grow what you don't measure. Right now, most people think they have a money problem, but what they actually have is a visibility problem. Money comes in, money goes out, and they have no clear idea where it went. At the end of the month, they feel stuck, confused, and frustrated. But confusion is not a financial condition. It's a lack of tracking. You don't need more income to fix that. You need awareness, because if you can't manage a small amount, you won't manage a large one either. More money doesn't solve disorganization. It amplifies it. The same habits that lose 5,000 rupees will lose 50,000 rupees. Just faster. That's why planning matters. Before anything grows, it gets structured. You decide where your money is going before it arrives, not after it disappears. That means sitting down and actually looking at the numbers. What's coming in, what's going out, and what needs to change. And this is where most people resist, because it forces honesty. You start seeing the unnecessary spending, the small leaks, the patterns you've been ignoring, subscriptions you forgot, impulse buys you justified, habits that quietly drain your progress. And once you see it clearly, you can't pretend anymore. That's why people avoid tracking. It removes excuses, but it also gives control. Because now, instead of reacting to your situation, you start directing it. You know what needs to be cut, what needs to be improved, and what can actually be saved. And even if the amount is small, it doesn't matter. Control always comes before growth. So for the next 30 days, track everything, every expense, every rupee, no guessing, no rounding off, just facts. Because once you see the truth of your money, you finally gain the power to change it. Let's stop softening this. Debt is not just a financial issue, it's a control issue. Every time you owe someone money, a part of your future no longer belongs to you. A portion of your income is already spoken for before you even earn it. That means your effort is no longer fully yours. It's divided. And the dangerous part, most people normalize it. EMIs feel normal. Credit feels convenient. Borrowing feels like a shortcut. But what it's really doing is quietly limiting your options. You can't take risks. You can't move freely. You can't build properly because you're constantly catching up. You're running, but not progressing. And here's the trap. Debt often starts small. A phone upgrade, a quick loan, a credit card swipe. Nothing feels serious in the moment. But over time, it stacks. And once it stacks, it starts controlling your decisions. Now, you're not choosing based on growth. You're choosing based on obligation. That's not freedom. Because real wealth isn't just about how much you earn. It's about how much you keep and control. And debt eats both. So if you're serious about changing your situation, this cannot be ignored. You need a plan, not just intention. List every single debt. No hiding, no guessing. Smallest to largest. Face it directly. Then start eliminating them one by one, not randomly, not emotionally, strategically. Focus on the smallest first. Kill it completely. Then take that same energy and roll it into the next one. Build momentum, because momentum is what keeps you going when motivation disappears. And yes, it will feel slow at the start. That's normal. But every payment you finish removes a layer of pressure. Every cleared debt gives you back control. Until one day, your income is finally yours again. And that's when real building begins. Because you can't build a future while you're still paying for the past.